My name is Evelyn, and today I am going to destroy my family. Not physically, of course. I'm not a monster. I'm going to do something far worse. I'm going to shatter their carefully constructed illusion of perfection. And illusions, as we know, die a much more painful death than people. It all began 3 months ago, on a gray, unremarkable Tuesday. In my mailbox, among the bills and junk mail, lay a thick, cream-colored envelope. Calligraphic handwriting, a gold-embossed monogram. J&A. James and Amelia. My younger brother's wedding. I smirked. I wondered in what capacity I had been invited. As the family disappointment, to make the groom look even more brilliant by comparison? Or perhaps as a living reminder of how not to live. I ran my finger over the heavy paper, feeling its expense. Inside, on an equally luxurious card, were words printed in an ornate script. Dear Evelyn, Amelia and I would be so happy if you would be a part of our special day. Knowing your attention to detail and your desire to always be useful, we have reserved a special role for you. After the formal dinner, when the guests move on to dancing, we would greatly appreciate your help in clearing the tables and coordinating the waitstaff. It would be an invaluable contribution to our celebration. With love, James and our parents. I read it 3 times. The words blurred, then swam back into focus as a monstrous, humiliating proposition. Not a guest. Not a sister. Not a family member. An assistant to the waitstaff. Your desire to always be useful. That phrase, delivered with a condescending smirk, was their favorite way of describing my attempts to earn their approval. It wasn't just anger that ignited in my chest. It was something else. Cold, heavy, and sharp, like a shard of ice slowly entering my ribs. Years of humiliation, of neglect, of unfavorable comparisons. It all accumulated and solidified in that single moment, transforming from a dull ache into tempered steel. I stared at that invitation, and something inside me broke. Or maybe something was finally forged. They think I'm useless. They think I'm a gray mouse, a failure who should be grateful for any chance to touch their radiant world, even if it means picking up their dirty napkins. Slowly, very slowly, I tore the invitation into 4 even pieces. And then again and again, until all that was left in my hands was a small pile of cream-colored confetti. All right, I whispered into the silence of my small but cozy apartment, which they called the kennel. You want me to be useful? Oh, I will be. I will be incredibly, unforgettably useful. On that day, a resolution was born within me. I wouldn't just go to this wedding. I would become its heart, its climax, and its finale. And when it was all over, they would understand that the biggest mistake of their lives was to underestimate the one they had so long and methodically tried to break. To understand the nature of my revenge, you must understand the nature of my pain. It wasn't sharp and sudden. It was a dull, chronic ache, like a toothache that lasts for 20 years. Ever since we were children, James was the golden boy, and I was his dim shadow. I was 8 when I won the city's math Olympiad. I ran home, waving my certificate and medal, my heart pounding with pride. Mom glanced at the certificate, nodded, and said, "That's nice, Evie. Put it on the dresser, just don't scratch it." That same evening at dinner, Dad spent half an hour telling guests how 5-year-old James had learned to tie his shoes, all by himself. Can you imagine what a smart boy he is? My medal remained on the dresser, slowly gathering dust. When I was 15, I wrote my first short story. My literature teacher said I had a talent and sent it to a regional competition. I won 2nd place. When I told my parents, my father, without looking up from his newspaper, grumbled, "Writing won't pay the bills." Now, James has signed up for golf. That's for useful connections, for the future. That year, James broke a $300 golf club and came in second to last at the school tournament. My parents bought him a new, more expensive one and said that it's not about winning but about participating and learning to take a hit. I got into university on a scholarship into the highly competitive department of archival studies and digital humanities. What kind of profession is that? My mother winced. You'll be digging in the dust for pennies. James, however, was accepted into a prestigious business school, a paid program. My father paid his tuition, and then for a chic apartment downtown, because the boy needs to focus on his studies, not on domestic problems. Every one of his achievements, no matter how minor, was inflated to cosmic proportions. Every victory of mine was belittled, ignored, or met with a condescending pat on the shoulder. They created a narrative. James was brilliant, successful, a future pillar of society. Evelyn was quiet, strange, useless. And they believed in it so fiercely that they made everyone else believe it too. I became a function for them. Did someone need to pick up the dry cleaning? Evie, you're not busy anyway. Babysit Aunt Martha's dog? Evie, you're just at home all the time. Help clean out the old garage? Evie, you're a strong girl. I was their unpaid labor, convenient and compliant. The most painful part was that James himself came to believe it. He transformed from a sweet younger brother into a smug, arrogant young man who looked down on me. He genuinely believed that his success was the result of his own genius, and my failures were a consequence of my own worthlessness. He couldn't see that his path was paved with our parents' money and connections, while mine was strewn with obstacles they themselves had created. He built a career at his father-in-law's investment firm. He started from the very bottom, Dad would say with pride. That bottom consisted of a private office, a personal assistant, and a salary 5 times mine. Meanwhile, after graduating with honors, I worked in the city archives for several years before starting my own small but successful business, digitizing and creating private electronic archives for wealthy clients. I worked 12 hours a day, found my own clients, did my own accounting. Did my parents know about this? Of course. But to them, it was a cute hobby. Well, at least she's busy with something, that's good, my mother once said to a friend on the phone, thinking I couldn't hear. And now the wedding. The apotheosis of his success. A union of 2 powerful families. Hundreds of guests, champagne flowing, a lavish estate in the countryside. And me? I was assigned the role of a servant. It wasn't just a slap in the face. It was a public declaration. The final punctuation in their long-term project of my annihilation. They wanted everyone to see. Here is our eagle. And this is his sister, clearing up after the guests. But they had miscalculated. For too long, they had been looking at the version of me they had created and had stopped seeing the real person. A person who was tired. A person who was angry. And a person who, thanks to her useless profession, knew how to dig in the dust. Both literally and figuratively. My plan for revenge was not a spontaneous outburst of rage. It was a project. Meticulous, methodical, calculated down to the last detail. The kind I was used to creating for my clients. I called it Project Icarus, because my brother, who had soared so high on the wax wings of his father's money, was about to come crashing down in front of everyone who had admired his flight. My useless job had taught me one main thing. Everything leaves a trail. Digital, paper, financial. People lie, but numbers and documents never do. And I knew where to look. James loved to brag. It was his weakness. At one of the rare family dinners I was still invited to, probably for contrast, he, sipping expensive wine, boasted about his new brilliant startup. Something to do with cryptocurrency investments for a select circle. He threw around terms I was sure he barely understood himself. Blockchain synergy, decentralized finance, risk hedging. Dad looked at him with adoration. Mom was beaming. But I heard the most important thing. He mentioned the name of his management company, Golden Horizon. That very night, I started digging. My skills, honed by years of archival work, turned out to be a lethal weapon. I knew how to find information where others saw only white noise. I sifted through public registries, social media, and business forums. I created several fake profiles of wealthy but foolish investors and infiltrated the private chat groups where Golden Horizon's clients hung out. The picture began to emerge quite quickly. Golden Horizon was a classic Ponzi scheme. Primitive, brazen, and built on greed. James promised investors fabulous returns of 30 to 40% annually, showed them beautiful but completely fake growth charts, and paid off the early investors with money from new ones. His success was built on the money of defrauded people. But that wasn't enough. Exposing a fraudster is one thing. My goal was bigger. I needed to destroy his reputation, his marriage, and my parents' smug satisfaction. I needed the blow to strike the very center of their world. I kept digging deeper. I hired a hacker from Eastern Europe, anonymously, through a freelance platform, to gain access to the company's internal servers. It cost me almost all my savings, but I knew it was an investment in justice. What I found exceeded all my expectations. In addition to the financial fraud, I discovered his correspondence. James was not only cheating his investors, but also his perfect fiancée, Amelia. And not with just anyone, but with the wife of his best friend, who, ironically, was supposed to be the best man at the wedding. Their messages were filled with vulgar details and mockery of Amelia. But that wasn't all. The cherry on top was a separate file that James had carelessly stored in a folder labeled Personal. It was a draft of a prenuptial agreement. In it, in black and white, it was stipulated that in the event of a divorce for any reason, Amelia would receive nothing of James's family fortune, but her family would be obligated to continue investing in his projects for the next 5 years. He wasn't just marrying her. He was planning to absorb her family and their assets, ensuring himself in case his pyramid scheme collapsed. Now I had everything: financial fraud, adultery, and a cynical marriage plot. 3 nails in the coffin of his perfect life. All that was left was to plan the delivery. I didn't want a scene with screaming and breaking dishes. That would be their style, not mine. My revenge had to be elegant, cold, and public. The wedding was to be held at a luxurious country club. The highlight of the evening, after all the speeches and toasts, was a love story video, a slideshow of James and Amelia's childhood photos set to sappy music. The technical side was being handled by Amelia's cousin, an enthusiastic young man in charge of all the AV equipment. I contacted him pretending to be a representative from the catering service. I told him we needed to coordinate the timing of the hot courses with a video presentation and asked him to send me the evening's exact schedule and the equipment's technical specifications. Without a second thought, he sent everything over. I created my own love story video. It started exactly like the original, with cute childhood photos set to a tender melody. But after exactly 90 seconds, once all the guests were relaxed and sighing sentimentally, the picture would change. I spent 2 weeks creating my masterpiece. I edited everything in a professional video program. First, screenshots of bank transfers and account statements, proving the flow of money within the pyramid scheme. Then, testimonies from several defrauded investors whom I had found and persuaded to record short videos. Their faces were obscured and their voices altered. After that, the juiciest quotes from James's correspondence with his lover, superimposed over photos of them together that I found on her private Instagram profile. And for the finale, a close-up, point by point, of the humiliating terms of the prenuptial agreement. The musical score also changed, shifting from gentle classical music to a sinister, suspenseful soundtrack. The final touch: delivery. The day before the wedding, I sent a courier to the country club with a gift basket for the tech guy, the cousin. Inside the basket, among the expensive liquor and snacks, was a USB drive in a beautiful gift box. The accompanying note, written by me, again pretending to be from the catering staff, read, "Dear Mark, this is the final, mastered version of the video file from the videographers. They asked to replace the previous version as it had a minor audio glitch. Thank you for your cooperation." I knew that in the pre-wedding chaos, no one would bother to double-check. My plan was ready. The trap was set. All I had to do was show up and enjoy the show. As staff, of course. The wedding day was dazzlingly sunny, almost offensively cheerful. I arrived at the country club a few hours before the ceremony. I wore a simple black dress, comfortable shoes, and an apron the manager gave me. I fit the role of assistant perfectly. None of my family members even glanced in my direction. My mother, in pearls and silks, fluttered among the guests, accepting compliments. My father, with a self-important air, shook hands with influential partners. And James, he stood at the altar, perfection itself in a custom-made tuxedo, watching his bride Amelia walk towards him down the petal-strewn aisle with an expression of such sincere adoration that for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I played my part. I carried trays, smiled at guests, and cleared empty glasses. I was invisible, a shadow at this celebration of life. And this anonymity gave me incredible power. I watched them, saw their fake smiles, heard their empty conversations about money and power. They were so confident in their world, in its unshakable foundation. They had no idea that their world was standing on the edge of a precipice, and that I was about to give it a gentle push. Finally, evening came. The banquet hall buzzed with hundreds of voices. Toasts were made. To the happiness of the newlyweds. To their future. To their beautiful family. My father gave a whole speech dedicated to his brilliant son, our pride and hope. I stood by the wall, holding a tray of empty glasses, my heart beating steadily and coldly. And then the moment arrived. The MC announced, "And now, dear friends, let's watch a touching film about the love of our newlyweds, prepared for them by their families." The lights in the hall dimmed. The first images appeared on a huge screen. A little James in a sandbox. A little Amelia with bows in her hair. The guests sighed with affection. My mother took out a handkerchief. I saw James take Amelia's hand and whisper something tenderly in her ear. 90 seconds. I counted them down. And then the music cut out. On the screen, instead of the next childhood photo, a giant diagram appeared. Colorful arrows showed money flowing from dozens of names to one central point, Golden Horizon LLC. A confused silence fell over the hall. Someone giggled, thinking it was a joke. But then an altered voice began to speak. My name is Viktor Igorovic. I am a retiree. I invested my entire life savings for my funeral into James's company. The silence became deafening. I saw James's face turn from confused to ashen white. He jumped up, shouting something at the tech guy, who just threw his hands up in confusion. Documents flashed across the screen. Screenshots of accounts. Then, the testimony of another defrauded investor. And then came the second act. Against a photo of James and his best man hugging like brothers, text began to scroll up the screen. Messages. Vulgar, explicit, demeaning. Can't wait until we're together again. Amelia is so boring in bed. You have no idea. The best man, standing near the stage, slowly turned his head toward James. His wife, sitting at a table, flushed red and shot up from her chair. Amelia snatched her hand away from James's, as if from a venomous snake. Her face was a mask of horror and disbelief. But I wasn't finished. The final chord. The screen showed a close-up of that clause from the prenuptial agreement. Complete financial bondage for Amelia's family in the event of a divorce. Amelia's father, a powerful and always composed businessman, turned crimson. He stood up from his table so abruptly that his chair crashed to the floor. The hall was in chaos. Shouts, whispers, someone pulled out a phone and started recording. And I watched my family. My father's face was gray. His pride and hope had crumbled to dust before his eyes. My mother stared from the screen to her son, her mouth open in a silent scream. She couldn't understand how her perfect world could have collapsed so suddenly. And James. He stood in the middle of the hall, blinded by the projector's light, looking like a pathetic, cornered animal. There was no anger in his eyes. There was primal terror. The terror of complete, absolute, public exposure. In that moment, he wasn't the golden boy. He was nothing. I slowly placed my tray on a nearby table. I took off my apron, folded it neatly, and walked toward the exit. As I passed my family's table, my eyes met James's for a fleeting moment. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. Understanding. He knew who had done this. He looked at his useless sister, and his gaze was a mixture of hatred, shock, and perhaps a drop of belated respect. I didn't smile. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him. And in my gaze, he read everything. All the years of pain, all the swallowed insults, all the injustice. And he understood that this wasn't just revenge. It was a verdict. I walked out of the hall, leaving the ruins of their lives behind me. Outside, the night air was fresh and cool. I took a deep breath. The satisfaction I felt wasn't hot and joyful, but cold, quiet, and all-encompassing. I had won. I had proven to them, and more importantly, to myself, that I was not useless. I was a force to be reckoned with. Revenge was sweet, searingly sweet. But as I sat in my car and the silence of the night enveloped me, I asked myself one question. When this sweetness fades, what aftertaste will be left on the tongue? And what am I to do now with this deafening, frightening freedom I have just ripped out for myself at such a terrible price? I had yet to find the answer to that question. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left, and thank you for watching.